Welcome back, guys. And in this video, in this series, JavaScript nuts and bolts, I'll be showing you how creepy the var keyword can become. I know many of us, while using JavaScript, we are used to defining variables with a var keyword. But today, I'm going to show you how creepy and how bad the var keyword can become while using it to declare variables. I'm not against using var because it is still being retained in the language so as to support older engines and many browsers, but it is not generally a good practice to initialize your variables with the var keyword. So without further ado, let us dive in and see this thing in action. So I'll be giving you two examples from my console here. I'll start with the first example, which shows that var usually reveals its variables to other scope or rather out of its scope, which is not a good practice. If you want a variable to remain within a scope, then it will not be a good idea to use var, because var at the end of the day it will allow the variable to be accessed out of that scope. I'll just create a function here. Let us call this function test, like so. And then inside this function, I'm going to create, let me just console log first. And then I'm just going to console log out of a loop. And then the next thing here, I'm going to console log console.log a variable by the name message. Remember, this variable does not exist, so we are supposed to see the error undefined when accessing this variable, or rather when console logging this variable, because it doesn't exist. So this is message, and then I'll create a for loop like so. And this should, as you remember, we spoke about always define, or rather always initialize your variables with let, especially in these loops. So in my case here, as a good practice, I'm going to use let I equals to 0. And for now, I'm going to say I should be less than 3, and then I plus plus, and then inside here, I'm going to just echo, or rather to console.log, and I'm going to console.log a variable by the name message. So let me create this variable. So var, I'm using var here very deliberate so that we can see what will happen with this variable. Let me just say message. And this message, I want it to be like, let us say test. And then I'll concatenate this variable to the variable I. In this case, use a plus, then your variable, which is I. So while console logging this variable using the for loop, I expect to see something like test0, test1, test2. And also let me add a console log again here, just to show us that we are entering the loop. And here just say entering the loop. And then I just console log again outside here and just say exiting the loop. And then after exiting the loop, what I want to do is to copy this guy and again console log the message variable that we have just created inside the loop. So the message variable like so. So let us run this code and then I'll explain what is happening here. Actually, let me just call our function here, which is test, like so, then enter. So this is the result. We are seeing enter out of loop, which is here, right? This console log, then console log message, which is undefined, that is okay. Then entering the loop, that is the message you're seeing here. Then test 0, test 1, test 2, which is just looping through this variable. So these three results are from the for loop, right? Then once the loop has ended, we see this exiting the loop, this console log here. But now something is interesting here is that when we console log a message variable out of this loop, again we see this guy test2, which means when I try to console log, or rather when I use the var keyword, I'm still able to access this message variable outside of this loop. And as we saw from another series, that if a value can be accessed out of a block and you never intended to do that initially, this can be a very big problem as you progress in your code, since you might change this variable unknowingly and causing a lot of errors and a lot of problem in your code. It is never good practice to use the var keyword in your logs if you want that keyword, or rather if you want that variable to be only accessed inside the block. If I now do this, let me just clear this guy and then do this. If I now change this var keyword to be let and then run this code, you see it throws an error, which is a good thing. It tells me that message is not defined. The good thing when using this let keyword is that it restricts the variable to be only initialized once. In other words, you cannot have something like having message here and then message here and then message here again, right? So that is why we are seeing this error, and it is not allowing us to again to try access this message out of the loop. So generally, while using the var keyword, it allows you to reinitialize variables, which is not a good practice. But while using the let keyword, it restricts the variables to only be initialized once and to only be initialized within the specific block or the specific context that you use. So it is always good to initialize your variables with the let keyword instead of initializing your variables with the var keyword. So guys, let us see the last example, which is a quite easy one. So from my console here, this code, I'm just going to delete this code up to here. And then I'm going to declare a variable message again. Just say message equals to a value of test. And then I'm just going to redeclare this variable and say message equals to test3. And then the last thing I'm going to do here, I'm just going to console.log our guy message like so. So when I run this function, semicolon, and then like so. So when I run this function, you see that it prints test3, which means this value was reinitialized without any problem while using this var keyword, right? Because I did set it to test, but again, while I tried to reinitialize this variable with the value of test3, that was successful. And as a result, you see here when I try to print this message, you see the value test3. Now, let us try to use this same example with the value, or rather with the keyword of let, like so. So I just use let in my example here, and then again try to run this code. And you see it throws an error and says, and code syntax error, identifier message has already been declared. So the let keyword is always a good keyword to use when declaring your variables, since it allows, or rather prevents, errors with reinitialization and errors that can be caused with variables being accessed outside of a scope. It is always a good practice to use the let keyword. So guys, that is what I wanted to show you in this video. If these videos interest you, please like, leave a comment, share, and until we meet again, bye bye.